right, you guys ready to get into it? We've been at like 8 to 10 minutes.
Let's go. I mean, I feel like we're about to begin the #1 podcast on the internet.
Dude,
we are.
This already actually is the #1 podcast on the internet.
Really, for Magic or for Dr. Pepper? What's the Dr. Pepper meta, do you think?
DP meta?
Yeah, the DB meta.
I mean, vanilla.
Like, obviously, it's dominated by classic Dr. Pepper, right?
I mean, everybody shows up
Consistent.
playing fucking classic, bro. But vanilla is a huge shout from my boy over here because it actually, don't sleep on the vanilla, bro. It's super good.
Yeah.
And honestly, I feel like Dr. Pepper, with its bursting with flavor, the flavor profile, the Diet Dr. Pepper is just as good as the regular Dr.
It is
Pepper.
one of the best diet sodas.
For sure.
Bar none. Like, as far as a facsimile to its original counterpart.
Should we get Diet Dr. Pepper at the shop?
I mean,
Yeah.
it shows up in top 16.
Yeah,
sometimes. Like, it has some top 16 finishes.
Hello and welcome to the MoxStars podcast. I am one of your hosts, Evan Kunai. Hello. Good to see you here again. I'm here with my two co-hosts. First being Christopher Ritter.
Hello.
And Jordan Garcia.
Yo, what is up?
Okay, I missed the memo on the vibe, I guess. All right.
Welcome to the #1 podcast on the internet. And sneak peek into today's episode, we have a top 16 finish by our one and only Dr. Pepper. Hi, Dr. Pepper. You're in.
Wow, I made it top 16 again, as per usual.
Undefeated.
So consistent. Today we are talking about two things. Primarily one thing, but our pregame action today is going to be touching on the top 16 finishers from the Surfside Showdown in San Diego this past weekend.
Hey, you may remember that we broadcast the finals of the qualifiers for that.
We broadcast the whole tournament of the
We broadcast the whole tournament.
of the Invitational, yeah.
Yeah, and check that out on our YouTube channel. It's actually video, not just a scrolling graphic, which is pretty cool.
First time you could see our beautiful faces.
Yeah. Before we get into that, if you would like to support the podcast, you can do so by first joining our Discord server and becoming a part of the community and become a MoxStar yourself. Get out there, chat with us, contribute to the Brew Buddies, all that good stuff. We have
We're getting people joining like pretty much every day at this point.
yeah. It's incredibly active at the moment, and it's cool to just see what people are popping off about. Especially Jordan here popping off with his Talion deck.
Yeah, always brewing in the Brew Buddies. You'll find us jamming all the time in there.
Yeah, it's a hot card. I'm excited for
Oh, yeah, hyped about Italian.
You can also follow us on YouTube, like, subscribe, and hit that little bell for more notifications as to when episodes drop, which is every Friday. You can check us out there and on all major podcasting platforms. So let's get right into it. We're talking about the Surfside Showdown, where we have the top 16 results right in front of us. We're super excited to touch on this because not
Hey,
only did
I
we
think
do
I
the
actually got you
broadcast-
distracted and we didn't talk about the main topic.
Oh, no. Well, yeah, maybe a little bit.
Yes, we're talking about Surfside Showdown, the tournament that just happened, covering the top 16. And then we're shouting out this awesome website that we're using, this awesome, great resource that everybody should check out. It's EDH Top 16. That's what we're looking at right now for this tournament. And then we're actually going to be going and looking at their net research for top 16 total in like kind of the meta right now. This is a great, I would call it data aggregate site for cEDH. And it's something we have not had to this caliber, I would say. So it's very fun to take a look at. And so just hopping in, let's look at the Surfside freaking Showdown.
Yeah, we're going to look at the top 16 from the Surfside Showdown and the top 16 overall of the meta.
Yeah.
Yep.
So number one, and by number one, I named number 16, is Ob Nixilis, Captive Kingpin.
That was a card that a commander that people were hot on when it was first spoiled. I think the talk has been that people have cooled off on it a little bit. So it's kind of cool to see it in the top 16 here.
Yeah, I'm happy to see it. I don't think I totally agree. There's always that like initial card hype, but then always following that is there's like the initial card like fear. So people just dogpile it. So like when we went to that tournament, it had just come out, and like so we've seen that 2 tournaments now, and it's just like people dogpile the deck. But I noticed that happened a lot less this tournament than it did last tournament a few months ago when it came out.
Yeah,
So,
Nixilis was able to grow and
do its
actually
thing.
knock people out with commander damage.
Yeah, so I very much still think it's a viable deck and a viable strategy. It needs that time to kind of fall back into line. It's just like too like like on the radar right
It had a target on its back.
Yeah, kind of like Tiv has a target. It had a big old target.
I can't remember a deck in recent history that had more hype than Obnixilis did because of how many cards just specifically deal 1 damage, especially with all the recent new cards coming out like Urbrask, which was like a really cool, unique piece for that just kept netting you cards and netting you mana. So
Yeah, I mean, it's the meta does churn in cEDH, but it does tend to pull on the same card pool and types of strategies. So you might get a different engine. You might get a piece for an existing strategy. It's rare, as in the case of Obnixilis, where you get a whole different line to pursue.
And the thing about those engines is like, you can just go to a 5-color deck and now it can just play all of the good little engines and stuff that come out and really not need to have the build around. But I think like that's what makes brewers super excited is a deck that makes you build around it and like things that make you find the weird cards that happen to synergize for it. And I think so rarely in cEDH do you get to find that. Like you're usually finding something more generic. So I think it's badass.
Yeah. For me as a player, it feels nice to do something different at the table. You know?
Exactly.
And speaking of doing something different at the table, and speaking of 5-color decks, we have number 15, Scion of the Dragon made an appearance.
Okay, but that's 5 colors with integrity.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
It's mostly a 5-color good stuff deck, but it does have some dragons in it.
Yes. In case you forgot what Scion of the Dragon does, it's 5 colors, 1 of each color, and then it is a 4/4 flyer with pay 2, search your library for a dragon card and put it into your graveyard. Powerful ability. If you do, Scion of the Dragon becomes a copy of that card until end of turn, then shuffle your library. Wowza. So I love this. I love the card. I've always loved the card. I've never built it before. And it's kind of awesome to see that it made an appearance and was able to be successful throughout the day. So just looking through the list, I'm sure there's a lot of like dragon combo lines.
I don't really know how the deck wins, but I know it's on Food Chain.
Yeah, it was pretty cool. I think this person was trying to focus.
It's not on Food Chain.
Dragon.
There is no Food Chain in this list.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Well, I just lied to all of you.
Yeah, they were going for like Cavern Horde Dragon, and then if or the Scion was on the battlefield, they were able to like pay 2 and then turn it into Dragon Lord Tremoka, so your opponents can't cast spells during your turn,
So
and then he would just pop off and win.
So it's like a dedicated dragon list.
Like there's a few in there
enabled by new tech, Cavern Horde Dragon from the Lord of the Rings set.
Yes, dude.
Yeah,
I'd love to see it.
Yeah, so oh man, the crazy just like treasure creation this deck has, because Old Gnawbone is also in the list. So there's some really powerful dragons here. I love this. Moving on.
Some very exciting stuff in this top 16.
Yeah, moving on to number 14. What do we got?
Sauron the Dark Lord. Evan, you've been talking about building this one.
I want to build it. I've seen the potential. I think it's there.
Yeah, other people have seen the potential too. There were, I think, 3 lists in this tournament.
Damn, that's awesome.
Yeah.
This is the Breach deck that I would want to play, and I'm sure that's what they were doing. Wheels and Breach.
Yeah, it's interesting. So, like, we got a recent Breach commander in Dihada, and people are saying it's potentially the best Breach commander.
Dihada put up some results in this tournament.
Yeah, and has been putting up results in a lot of tournaments. But, I think Sauron's really fun because, it is kind of also a Breach engine. It is essentially like the brain freeze component to your Breach line in the command zone. So...
Yeah, and also, not to get off topic of competitive play, did you see the new art for Sauron the Dark Lord? That got spoiled yesterday.
Yeah,
or a couple days ago.
sick.
A week ago at the time of this. So sick. It's like acid trippy, just like super cool vibes. Yeah.
Yeah, one of those.
Very an incentive to play the commander.
Right, to go to those RCQs and stuff like that, too.
They've been really bringing it out for the RCQ arts and stuff lately.
Yeah. Number 13, we have...
Speaking of...
Hey, Dihada. Binder of Wills.
Hi, Dihada. Great deck. I think we all just know that it's incredibly consistent. Moving on to number 12, we have Moira and Teshar.
This was... I had to look up what this card was.
I literally don't even know.
And it's a black and white legend from March of the Machines Aftermath, I believe. And I also did not retain that information because I don't expect to see it again. But it's great to see a pilot take a very unique commander and unique deck.
I've never even seen this card. Okay, I'm going to read it real quick. 3 white black for a flying 4/5. Whenever you cast a historic spell, return target non-land permanent card from your graveyard to the battlefield. Seems good. It gains haste, exile at the beginning of the next end step. If it would leave the battlefield, exile it.
Wow, I think unconditional non-land permanent card as long as you cast a historic spell. Wow.
And it's playing those Orzhov Stacks pieces, and then I think it's on Bomberman combo and Turbo Naws and things like that.
Professor Onyx as an outlet.
Broodlord is an outlet for it.
Yeah, it's playing just all the win
crazy
cons
deck.
available in Orzhov. I think does it have Bolas' Citadel Divining Top as well?
It does not have. It has Divining Top, but it does not have.
It doesn't have the other
Aether
Flux
Flux
Reservoir. Okay, yeah.
But it's also it has so many win conditions. It's also on Abdel Adrian lines.
Yep. Yeah, it's just all the good stuff
Walking
in
Ballista,
Orzhov
plus
with a underpowered engine. So great pilot, I'm assuming.
This is awesome.
Vile Entomber
Yeah.
is
Yeah,
a utility
so good.
piece. Yeah, wow, crazy. That's a cool list.
Playing a
So-
ton of zero cost artifact creatures to power that Adnod.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's some wild stuff.
So it's essentially Teshar, but in black white,
Yeah.
Right?
Feels really good.
which just seems really good.
Yeah, all you need is stuff for one turn. You only need it for one turn on the battlefield, and you should be able to set yourself up.
That's insane. Okay, well, yeah, shout out for hitting top 16. They got 12th place, Robert A. Spears. Love to see it.
Number 11, we have a deck we're going to be talking a lot about today. We have Blue Farm, Crom, and Timna.
Yeah, definitely overrepresented in the tournament, or appropriately
always.
represented for it being blue.
I mean, can we just talk about how interesting it's been up to this point? Like, this is the first, boring deck we've come across.
Hey,
yet.
it's gonna get interesting
There we
again.
go.
It's gonna spice.
Oh,
in a
yeah,
second.
no, I know,
Yeah.
but it's kind of awesome. So they went 2-3-2, just enough to get everybody else so far has been 2-4-1.
Yeah.
So 2-3-2 hasn't been enough to get him above everybody else to 11th.
10 through 16, all tied at 28.57% opponent win percentage.
Yeah.
So that's how they ended up getting in. That's crazy.
Yeah, super close. I mean, not much to talk about Timna Crom, and we could look at the list.
Blue Farm is Blue Farm.
Blue Farm is Blue
It's
Farm.
the
know
best
it.
cards in the game.
There's plenty of places talking about it, and I don't see anything like crazy spicy in the list. No shade, just being honest.
Nope.
Yeah. Pretty much staple list.
I will say that if you're playing Blue Farm, it's not that you're not creative, but the lists are pretty much figured out, and they're just really good.
Yeah. Why wouldn't you play the best cards?
Yeah. Number 10, Tassiger, the Golden Fang.
Hey, a little spicy again.
Yep.
Yeah.
This is an old school commander.
Yeah, it's one of those old school strategies that can definitely run away with games. You see it from a mile away because you've heard rumor of it or you've seen it before. But yeah, just when it comes out to play at the highest level, it does sneak away with games.
I mean, I love it. It's like it's playing some big old bulky boys. It's playing Scholar of the Lost Trove, Toxrill, Hoarding Broodlord, Hullbreaker Horror, Nezahal.
I love decks that can squeak in Nezahal.
Yeah, oh, so good.
Yep.
It's fun.
Number 9, Kalia of the Vast.
Yeah, this is where we start getting some more interesting breakers. This is number 9 now, so we have 3 wins, 4 draws, 0 losses with Kali of the Vast here.
Now, this will be a little bit of a spoiler, but
4 losses, 0 draws, my bad.
Kalia does not make the top 16 cut of all time, but its conversion rate is 50% right now. As far if it makes top 16, or if it's entered into a tournament greater than 64 players, it has a 50% chance of making it to the top 16.
I think that's also the confidence of the pilot and
Totally.
yeah.
Oh yeah. It's
Yeah.
a pilot for sure, but
Yeah.
the confidence, in the experience in playing the deck, leads whoever it is out there who's pumping these stats up. They're doing a great job.
It's a very good point because on the adverse of that, Blue Farm is the most represented deck in tournaments, but it has actually extremely low conversion rate of 20%, lower than what we'd expect of 25%.
Well, I mean, what you see is less experienced pilots going okay, I'm just going to play
Everybody
the deck with
knows
the best
it's a good
cards.
deck.
It's a good deck, and so it has that lower conversion rate versus a higher skill level deck like Kali of the Vast. You got to assume it's a better pilot.
Totally.
Yeah.
Number 8, Rograk and Tevishzat.
Yeah, Rograk showed up with 2 partner pairings a lot. This is one of them.
I just want to say it's actually 8 and 7 are both Rog and Tavesh.
Yeah.
So I knew that I've heard about this deck. I've seen it a little bit, and I've heard that California and the West Coast is very stacks dominant, and this is kind of a deck from that meta. I'm excited to see it here, but apparently that's kind of the norm.
It's a super interesting deck.
Very
I like
interesting,
it.
very chaotic
The
deck.
only creatures the number 8 showing is playing a Sire of Insanity and Void Winnower, which I love because you see Rakdos, you assume maybe it's on a World Gorger line or something like that, and that is not the case here.
I saw the list and they're like playing Luca. They're playing some
Yes.
some effects like that allow you to just roll into the next thing. And that's I mean there are Oath of the Druids decks that literally do like go for the same thing, like literally do the same thing. So you have one creature or one or two creatures in the entire list just to like
Cyrus Ending Void Winter, and you're playing like Chandra, Awakened Inferno.
Some real chunky 6 CMC planeswalkers.
Just so tasty.
Yeah.
How can you not have fun playing this? They're playing Nether Void.
Nether Void and Stranglehold. Yeah.
Let's fucking go.
All right, that's 8 and 7. So let's move on to number 6. We're looking at Malcolm and Timna.
Another popular deck. Not surprised to see it.
Yep, it's popular. It is off the axis of what is normally run with Timna. I feel, or with Malcolm and Timna. You're actually leaving red off to the side, which sort of cuts you free from a few lines with Malcolm, which is a little, like it's off that off the axis, like I was saying.
You don't play Glinthorn Buccaneer, which is like.
Two-card combo.
Back in the day when I was playing Malcolm with Glinthorn Buccaneer, I was like, I would never play this deck without Glinthorn Buccaneer. But, over time...
Times have changed.
Times change, and this deck is just stuck around and consistently grinding out tournaments.
If you get to the mid-game... If you get to the mid-game, you're generating mana and cards.
It's everything you want to do in Magic, and it provides you the flying attacker for Timna plus the mana. It's hard to deny that is very good.
All right, we have number 5, a familiar name, Atlas, here with Kenrith, the Returned King.
Hey, shout out. One of the first 5-color players we've talked about today.
Yeah, outside of the Scion of the Ur Dragon.
Yeah, further down the standings, you definitely have some Nagilas and some other 5 and some Cisse results. But the highest showing for a 5-color player.
Yeah, got to dap the boy up for making top 5. He was actually top cut out of top 4. So 4-2-1 with a 57.14% win record.
Yeah, great player with a great deck,
which is second only to the person who won the entire tournament. It was pretty cool to watch him. We sat and we watched the top 16. We've mulled over this list in Brew Buddies a bunch, like gone through and just sort of like helped boil down what this is all about. And I think if you look at the list, you can somewhat come to understand what the deck wants to do, but you don't truly see its power until you see the pilot in action. So like watching the stream with the top 16, the way that he moves people like with words is more powerful than the actual what is represented on the cards.
Well, if you read Atlas's excellent primer on the deck, and I recommend that if you're interested in this commander, he does a really good job of explaining how this isn't just 5-color good cards. This is his gameplay style, comes from doing the politics, and he explains how to use the politics with the deck.
Right.
Yeah.
It's such a cool read. And his list is, if you want to find all of this information, you can go to Eminence or events.eminence, and you can go to the little tournaments tab, and the Surfside Showdown should be the first one that pops up. It's always going to be the most recent one. And you can check out his list there and give that primer a read. Number 4, Crom and Timna. Blue Farm is back again.
Shock.
Also number 3.
Also number 3. Funny enough. We know what the deck does. Sweet. Cool. Number 2, Kinnan.
Hey. Highest result for Kinnan. There were, I think, a handful of other Kinnan players in the tournament as well.
And Kinnan just won, I want to say the most recent Chaos tournament online, but a recent
you can check that on Eminence.
Check it on EDH Top 16. But Kinnan is doing very well right now. I got rolled at my last tournament against a Kinnan.
Yeah, Kinnan's a sneaky boy.
Yeah.
And number 1, the winner of the Surfside Showdown, we have Rograk and Silas Wren.
This is the only one in the top 16.
Which is, is it surprising that it's the only one?
I mean, I can scroll down further and see how long it takes to see him again.
I think it's a very...
Oh, nope, number 17.
Oh, there you go.
Okay, yeah.
Didn't take a long time.
I think it's a very high skill cap deck.
It is, yeah. I do, before we get further into it, I do want to make a note that Tivit, which has been making a lot of noise lately, did not make the top 16. No Tivit pilots.
I wonder if seeing that kind of effect we saw with Obnix list, where Tivit is now getting dogpiled for winning too much.
Totally possible.
I mean, it'll come up later. So let's just dive right into it. The Surfside Showdown was great, but let's move on to the top 16 of all time on Eminence events. This is a really cool tool. Jordan, I feel like you explain it way better than I do. What do you love about this tool, man?
Okay, I highly suggest everybody check this out and kind of follow this as a great Magic resource moving forward, right? Remember your pre-cEDH lives where all you did was live and die by EDH rec. Well, that was a terrible way to do it. This is a great way to proceed forward. This is actually relevant data points that you can use to improve your game or find new decks you might be interested in. So essentially, it is just a giant aggregator of tons of data points. And because of that, we actually can start seeing a bunch of new information and tendencies because more than we've been able to before, because we haven't had access to a lot of this before. So one thing I'm really excited about is the conversion tab. And we didn't talk about it a lot, but there was like a win rate thing. But once you go into the main aggregator, not tournament breakdowns, there's conversion, which is very exciting. So Evan was talking about Kalia having this amazing conversion rate, right? You don't see it highly represented, but the conversion is when it shows up, it does very, very well, and it puts up records. And then what I was saying, and the complete opposite of that, number one as far as coverage is Timna Crom, but it only has a 20.4% conversion rate.
You know what's interesting? Looking at this list, you know it actually has a lower conversion rate?
What's that?
Kinnan.
Kinnan.
At 16.53%.
See, I could totally see that because it's kind of like, it looks very welcoming as a newer player to do the big green stompy stuff and like get that satisfaction in cEDH stuff and are familiar with. Mm-hmm. But it ain't that easy to win a game of cEDH, and like you actually need to play very well.
Well, speaking of newer players, the other ones with conversion rates around that in the top are Yuriko, which is number one with the bullet for new players, very easy to understand.
Yep.
Very low cost as well to get in on, and then Rocco Cabaretti Caterer, which is also very friendly to new players.
14.75.
Yeah.
Yep. All you basically tell people with Rocco is, hey, go find Food Chain or go find Kiki Jiki and you win the game.
And then with a super low conversion rate, 7.89% Winota, which I think is
another beginner deck.
Yeah, another beginner deck and also a target on its back.
Totally.
Yeah.
So we're going to go through real quick the top 16 of this so you guys can kind of see what the data is showing for kind of a relative meta, which is kind of cool. Like, a lot of times our metas are based off of who we play with and they're very like localized. And this is like the first time we've actually been able to branch out as a community-based game.
And, I just want to add that you can refine that data even more. Like, so the top 16 that we're looking on is the base top 16 that they're going to deliver you, which is tournaments happening within the past year and tournament size over 64 entrants. Now, you can refine that the scope of that any way you want. And there's other ways to search through this data to get you the data that you want.
Yeah, this is like the most simplistic version of it. And like just on the homepage, you can go so much deeper on this website.
If you feel like there has been some set releases in the past 6 months that have shaken up cEDH more than we think, you can limit this to a 6-month search, and that might shake up the top 16.
Right, that's going to give you definitely a better picture.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, totally. So, what I was going to say is I would recommend, if we're going through the top 16, I would recommend doing the opposite when you go on here, is go backwards and just go down and see like cool, fun decks that you might want to play that are not top 16 decks that kind of get an idea for how they play and like their standings and stuff. If you're looking for that new like inspiration, is my suggestion.
And you feel like this is a better starting point than the deck list database?
100%,
I 100% think that this is.
That was a leading question, guys.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
But I just think like this is such like fresh data. These are fresh decks that people are playing actively in tournaments right now. Mm-hmm. And so it's a really great way to see like what cards people are hot on. Like that changes all the time. We all like find out that we're super into a card and then people start putting in their decks and that goes into like waves and trends and stuff. So it's a great way to start picking up on that kind of new thing. Finding new spice for decks.
I will say my one tip when you go into this, like when you go into Eminence and you're trying to use this as a tool to find or create a new deck, you can click on like any of these decks that you see in the top 16 or further down, and it will give you a list of the best performances by these decks or by these commanders, these set of commanders. Just know that you should be clicking through each list and looking at the differences in their builds. You can actually, there's that compare tool on Moxfield too, so you can actually use that to see what is different from each list. know that the top finishes for these decks are people, if there are pet cards in there, they are incredible pilots. That their builds that are unique and stuff like that are built around their play styles, and so take that with a grain of salt and take that into consideration. Don't just blindly copy and paste, because you're not going to understand unless you completely read the primer what that deck is going to do.
Yeah, where by comparison, EDH Rec, the deck list database, if you go there are people making decisions about like, hey, these are the 2 or 3 iconic decks for this archetype.
Right. Yes, and they boil it down. They don't allow so much width.
Yeah, and I think their process too is just like, hey, how good is the primer on this, and then how many cards in common. Like, they're not going to put the best list up. They're going to put the most iconic list.
Yeah, they don't
exactly. And like things even fall out of date. Like I've been on there recently, and things have been updating in months, and so like new cards have come out that aren't even on there, which is insane. So this is why I really say like this is a great place to get that fresh data, like very real data.
Yeah, it can be broad sometimes. It can be broad in scope,
but it's a resource ultimately to go back to and like dial in.
Yeah, but ultimately this tool does give you the ability to refine your search and actually make it much more narrow for you as well. So let's get started.
Let's do it.
Number 16.
Malcolm Timna. Just a fucking solid deck. You can draw cards, make mana.
It's really solid. It banks on getting to the mid game. When it gets there, it's at its most dangerous.
It has a 20% conversion rate which I totally believe. It has no way to win in the command zone.
You see both those commanders a lot, but just partnered with different combinations.
And I think it's something
not the optimal combination.
Yeah, and I think it's something even if it was, say if it is blue farm, I think it's really hard for people to win the game when you don't have that. You don't have a tutor in the command zone. You don't have a part of the combo in the command zone. If you're just relying on resources, that means you are relying on yourself to pilot your deck to a win instead of your deck just following you to win, like a Rocco deck.
Yeah, I mean, just a little self-fluff here. I have a combo piece in my command zone, and I have a 66% conversion rate.
Heyo.
You have a 66%.
How do I pull up that data on EDH? Top16.com.
I don't think you can.
Oh, interesting. Okay,
all right.
Oh, what is it? Not Evan's deck? Oh, it's Yuriko the Tiger Shadow.
Ooh.
Just kidding. I think your deck actually would be better than that.
Yeah, 15 and 14, I think we can blow past Yuriko and Rocco because we already mentioned that.
Yeah, Yuriko.
Great intro decks. Yuriko, easy peasy to understand. It's very combat focused.
Well, I think it's interesting that you say like Rocco is a beginner deck because you look at it and it's a 14.75% conversion rate. So I do agree a lot of beginners probably play this deck, but to me it is a very high ceiling deck because
for sure, yeah.
You can just tutor for anything at any moment and figure.
So you can play at a higher skill level, but it's easy for a beginner to be like, oh, my commander will just be a tutor.
Know
for
your
anything.
One combo that you focus.
Yeah,
fair enough.
Yeah.
In that case, I'd say it's like has a high skill ceiling. Where it's like you can do well on it, but the better you are at it and the better you are at the game, the further you can take it.
And that is going to be true of every single one of these.
But it's interesting, like we were talking about going into further data, right? So 14% conversion rate. You click on it, and then number one player here, Juan Pego, he has a 57.14% win rate, right?
I mean, that's great.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like you really start. There's a guy with a 60% win rate on this. Like you start looking at it and you're like, all right, these are the pilots that I need to see what they're doing to see how to make this deck like sing.
It's going to be absolutely crazy if you go into these statistics and you click on each deck because you're really only going to see these decks maybe finish first place one time. Like Rocco has only gotten first one time out of 61 entries in any tournament over 64 players in the last year.
Yeah.
Isn't that absolutely insane? Like that's how competitive these tournaments are.
Yeah. And that's why it's been so hard to get data up to this point for these tournaments.
Right.
Okay, yeah, moving on. Yep, we have hey, my deck, what up? Krom Tavesh at a 26.47% conversion rate.
Yep, number 13.
I think that's another case where you see these partners a lot, but it's not necessarily the optimal combination.
Correct. Also, they're just two draw engines, so
yeah.
Well, I mean, your build and the purpose for this deck and why it is so attractive is because depending on your meta or depending on what region you're in, like the deck does really well at pushing through stacks. Like you can get Tavesh out and you can actually create a draw engine that doesn't like interfere with any of those rule of law effects or anything like that, right? Because Krom folds to that.
I was gonna say like people keep saying how good Krom is, but I've never experienced this because of our local meta, our personal meta. It's rule of law everywhere. So Krom is more often than not a terrible card for me. Tevesh is, however, the polar opposite of that and is great at eating its way through stacks pieces.
Yeah, which is why your behavior tends to lead to you funneling Tevesh over Crom, and everyone else who's not playing in Rule of Law metas are looking at you like, why are you going Tevesh right now? You go for Crom.
Right. But then, like, it lets you pivot it depending on, like, the table you're at and stuff. Right? So it all goes back to pilot skill, which then dictates, your conversion rate, how much that person's winning.
Well, you have that new card too, that 4-drop enchantment that it might give you more purpose.
Oh,
Descendants,
so silly,
Descendants Fury, but it gets a Hullbreaker Horror onto the battlefield.
Yeah. If you haven't seen Descendants Fury, go look at it and then look at that deck. It seems hilarious.
Yeah.
Okay, this is a deck that has been making waves and has just been absolutely crushing lately.
At number 12.
Number 12, Dargo and Thrasios. Love to see some teamer representation. This deck is just so good. It's so fast. It's great at turning out wins. At a 27.5% win rate, I think it's pretty decent.
It's explosive. That's
Very
like the number one thing. It has 2 outlets in the command zone. That's the thing. Both commanders are outlets for whatever combo you're trying to set up at the moment, whether it's just infinite mana. Well, Dargo is like the infinite mana piece, and then Thrasios is the outlet for that. So like cards like Thermopod, which are very surprising to me, but actually make sense when you look at the strategy that allowed this deck to go infinite and draw your entire library and win the game. So really, I've seen it play a few times in tournament, and I've seen it play more on the side, like in casual games, or just like nothing's at stake. And it is hard to pin down.
Yeah, I think what we're seeing is a big pivot towards creature-based strategies and creature-based win conditions. They're a lot harder to interact with, and they get around a lot of specific stacks. And because of that, we're seeing certain decks that can take advantage of it, like this. I'd say this deck has the explosiveness of like an ad nauseum deck, a turbo deck, because of what Dargo lets you cheat. Like Dargo plus Greater Good and like a Bergie out is just insane, right? So, and like, Displacer Kit and Dockside, that goes insane.
Do you think the underrepresentation that you see is just like people shy away from explosive decks that aren't, ad nause turbo, because you can just stick your finger in there and it's safer to play something mid-range, something stacksy, something
Well, I think the
committed to something else.
Yeah, the most solid sentence I can give you on that is consistency is king. Consistency is power. So I think that when people look at this deck, they see something that can be very easily disassembled and can be made to be less consistent, or they haven't seen it be consistent, so that's why they shy away from it. But if you're a true blue Dargo Thrasios pilot, you know how consistent it is, and you are willing to take your chances on that.
Fair enough.
And like the great thing about this versus like the cEDH DDB, right, is we can see this deck and how well it's performing, and how like active people are using it. But I would still say that this is a pretty fringe deck, and it's still pretty new to the meta.
I mean, it's got a great conversion rate, 27.5.
It does. It actually is the best in the top 16.
Hey, look at that data.
Yeah, so I think...
Yeah, and also
we'll see more.
only 40 entries.
Yeah.
And if you're looking at the top 16, a lot of these have like 60 to 100
True.
or more entries. So
yeah. So I think we'll see a lot more of it as people get more comfortable with it and see how well it actually does perform. But it's a kind of fringe deck. You're playing some weird cards and some weird strategies, and it kind of puts people off.
I see that in number 11, if we're ready. Yeah, Malcolm Tana. You see Malcolm Tana, the Bloodsower, is... a different choice to get in that same team or color combination.
Well, to me, this is probably the most optimized Malcolm deck that wants to win with Glinthorn. Like this is like, let's jam Glinthorn ASAP. Like with all like the finale devastation effects and everything, very achievable.
Yeah.
So you think these are like residual? This number 11 showing is maybe a residual that if we adjusted the data, it might not even be in that top 16.
No, I wouldn't say that.
You were saying earlier that we're off Glinthorn for the Malcolm decks.
No, just on that one deck. One deck does well by going off Glinthorn. This is the deck that does well by solely focusing Glinthorn. Like I was on the Vial Smasher version, so I still had like all the distractions of Ad Nauseam and Underworld Breach and everything. This is like, let's play fucking Glinthorn and win this game.
Yeah, this deck moves so incredibly fast that the idea is you turbo Malcolm out, like whether it's a Jeweled Lotus or something like that, and then you're immediately going into Glinthorn the following turn, and then winning the game. And so with that in mind, you haven't burned all of your resources in your hand, so you're probably still sitting on counter spells and stuff like that. So the idea is that you're able to go quick enough to where you still haven't burned your interaction. You can protect the win before anyone else really has their shields up, before anyone else can really defend themselves.
And this is largely, again, a creature-based combo that can go very fast, which I think is poised very well in our current meta, and that's why we're seeing 2 back-to-back decks that do the exact same thing.
Yeah, hard to interact with unless you have a Path to Exile or whatever.
Yeah. And actually, speaking of creature-based combos that win the game, we are going to talk about the next one, number 10, and that is Tayam Luminous Enigma. This deck has been rolling lately.
I actually don't... It doesn't bode well for its future, though. I love the deck. I've always loved Tayam, but I think that this is a fluff number. I don't think it's going to stay at 10 for long. And that's just because I just said consistency is power. And this is one deck that I feel like has a tough time being consistent or more consistent than even the decks that are below it.
Is that just the color combination? You're not getting...
You have black and you have tutors and stuff like that, so you can refine it down and have plenty of like ways to search the cards out. I just think that there are some times when this deck needs to rely on the 3 cards that are milled in order to do something. And it's just really hard to set up the 3 counters on the creatures on the board. Like, there are a few cards in the list that, like the Money Changer, which is a really cool old card that people are loving.
Scurry Oak does it.
Yeah. Scurry Oak is another like combo piece, and it's funny enough that...
But it's just there's better engines. It's a non-optimized engine. It requires you to play bad cards to get that engine going. The engine just doesn't work automatically.
Exactly. It feels a lot like Yuriko, where you do have to like play some bad cards or some creatures that just have evasion so you can get through and get that trigger. So...
And Yuriko, you can at least rely on combat if you're not doing...
Yeah, and you can go big flash flips and everything. I will say that this wins exceptionally well through stacks. And
it does.
So in a stack-heavy meta, I would not be surprised that Tayam does very well.
Is there a reason not to be on like Thalia and Gitrog, though? If you want to...
I think
it's
Tayam,
4 mana. You can only get things back with 3 mana. So you...
No, but I mean, it has commander versus Tayam.
Well, Tayam wins the game. Like, as I know Evan's hating on it, Tayam like is amazing. And wins the game.
I'm not hating on it. I'm definitely trying to be realistic with it. But there are a lot of new cards that have bolstered the strategy. Like
Orcish Bowmaster goes.
Bowmaster
goes
insane.
Because you create 4 counters just off of 1 cast. So it's like it comes in, creates and masses 1, deals 1 damage and masses 1. It enters with a vigilance counter, or it gets 3 counters off the first one. A mass 1 +1/+1 counter gets a vigilance counter too. So you automatically, just by putting Bowmaster on the battlefield, get a Tayam activation. You just need that 3 mana. But it does surprise me sometimes when people don't play Ashnod's Altar, because you can layer. In case you didn't know this, you can pay the cost in any way you want or in any sequence of events. So it doesn't say, it says remove 3 counters. Or pay 3 mana, remove 3 counters, and then do the whole thing. You can remove the 3 counters and then pay the mana. So you can actually remove the counters from the creatures, sacrifice them to Ashnod's Altar, and then spin the wheel. So it's and then you can just loop. You can honestly just loop Bowmasters a bunch until you get what you need in the graveyard, as long as you have Ashnod's Altar out. So there are combo lines and very efficient lines that need little setup for this deck to win. I just like I was saying, there are less optimal creatures in there to get the engine rolling. Plus,
you have to play a higher density of bad cards.
Yep, and it's becoming a boogeyman at tables because people know that it can survive. It can live through things like Rule of Law and thrive through Rule of Law because it doesn't need to cast. What is coming up more and more often is Drana and Limvala, which absolutely shuts this deck off. So we'll see if, as the meta forms and stuff like that, if it's able to maintain its top 10 status. I just don't, like right now, just trying to be realistic, people will adjust. And it's a deck that's just taking the meta by storm.
Well, I mean, if like Drana and Limvala is a silver bullet for it, and Drana and Limvala is also a good card to play it, if otherwise, it's like one of those things where like Rest in Peace isn't a silver bullet that you always play.
Right.
Because sometimes it might turn off your own strategy. Sometimes it's a dead card. Drain-In and Linvala is not a dead
The
card.
amount of times I've seen that card lately, it's everywhere.
Yeah, someone might be playing it incidentally. Same deal with like certain strategies where you might be off because of Orcish Bowmasters. Even if someone's not playing that to be a silver bullet for you, they're playing it anyway.
Yeah.
So why run your head into it?
I also think it's still like the cards have been around for a long time, but it's still pretty new to like this like spotlight it's having and like it thriving. And I think it's a very good deck.
It's not solved yet.
Yeah, and also I think like people are now going to start seeing it. So you're right, people are going to focus it more, and people will know to just kill Tyam and
and then
not
the
let
deck's
you do
off.
anything.
Yeah, because the deck doesn't do anything to interact with the rest of the table all that much. It only really funnels its own strategy.
Yeah.
So,
but if it can do it by itself, then it will, and it'll do it well.
Yeah. So that's like the big thing is that if people can, you don't want to be sitting at a table with a Taeon player because you feel like you constantly have to keep the pressure on them, and that throws off the entire balance of the game where you have 4 players contributing. Like it's basically 3 players contributing to a game and 1 player just sort of sitting in a corner trying to do what they need to do. So ultimately, those decks don't necessarily climb the ladder all that high. All the decks that we're going to mention above this have a lot of mid-game potential, where Taeom does have mid-game potential, but it doesn't interact with, like I said, the board all that well.
Hey, speaking of decks above this, number 9, Kenrith the Return King.
Yeah, then this goes to, Evan's talking about consistency is king. Like Kenrith is it. Kenrith is consistency.
Yeah. You know what, too? 24.07% conversion rate. Not bad. It has all the good cards, also relies on pilot skill.
It's funny that we know Adam. If you go into Kenrith and the number 1 list is Adam Bork, we know him. He goes to Gabby's, and I've played against him a bunch. He's one of I see his name 3 times on this, 4 times. It just keeps going down, and there's more Adam as you keep going. He has been representing this deck incredibly well. He's been playing in a lot of those online tournaments. I'm guessing like MoxStars and stuff like that. But this deck just thrives in the mid game.
Atlas is actually a number 7.
Yeah, from the Surfside, yeah.
As Kenrith, so shout out.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, because the deck can do anything.
It does everything.
So it does everything. Why not?
Yep.
Yeah.
And I think that in a meta where you are seeing the mid game, I think a lot of people are fearful of cEDH because they fear that it will end on turn 2 or 3. That's not the case. Most of these games go deep into turns due to how much interaction there is, and that's where Kenrith wants to be. And if you're a political player, you can sort of manipulate people's plays. You can win at instant speed so easily with Kenrith that there's no wonder why it's number 9 and why it has a 24% conversion rate.
That's actually a little surprising to me because you can do anything. I would expect it to be harder for like people to turn that conversion into a win.
I think, I mean, if you're looking at the 5 other things, like Najil is number 2 and Cisse is number 7.
Oh,
and I think those are more obvious, like, if you don't know
what to focus.
Yeah, it tells you what to do.
It tells you what to do.
Whereas
There's
Kenrith lets you do
instruction
anything, and so you don't have a structure for
Yeah.
it. So you're not necessarily going to be able to, unless you know how to use all the good cards correctly,
Right.
you're not going to get the benefit of them.
Yeah, for sure.
All of the text is relevant.
Yeah, it
all-
does.
exactly.
It really
all of
is.
It requires a huge amount of knowledge, which
Yeah.
if you read Atlas's Primer, like he talks about that. Like it's a great deck where it can go into any meta as long as you know the meta.
Right.
Yep. Number 8.
I'm surprised to see this above Kenrith, and that is Atraxa, Grand Unifier.
Yeah, I was curious about that too because I don't see a ton of people talking about it. If you browse the tournament results, like recently, there's not a ton of top finishes.
For me, it's been a fairly underwhelming deck since it's come out, and since I've seen so many people play it. So I mean, I'm actually surprised to see it as number 8. It does have a 22.95 conversion rate, so pretty decent.
Not awful.
No, but I mean,
Yeah.
It is a deck that Sans red in a food chain strategy, so it omits Squee, and it usually only goes for Mist Hollow Griffin. The thing is that you can't really get rid of the card once it's gone. So there have been a few new lines popping up with this, with Hoarding Broodlord, that saw in half Broodlord, go get Mist Hollow Griffin, go get food chain, and then all of a sudden you're off to the
they're
races.
exiled.
Yeah,
I like that.
So that's a cool line. I think Guy.
There are a lot of cool lines in this deck, or that you can put into this deck.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a
And-
cool deck. But it is surprising to see it number 8 ahead of Kenrith, especially.
Yeah, ultimately, I just look at the 4 colors and I go, well, if you just had those 4 colors, what kind of deck could you build? What kind of card advantage could you generate? And I've just seen people hardcast Atraxa and be okay with that. Seeing 10 cards is still really good.
It's great. Yeah.
Yeah. So sometimes seeing those 10 cards is enough to set you up for the following turn or set you up for the win on that turn. There's also crazy cards like Displacer Kitten.
That's what I was going to say.
Yeah, you know, that can just help you pop off.
Not only that, but these are the perfect colors. I mean, save for Dockside, these are great colors for Displacer Kitten because you get the Teferi loops, you get the Eternal Witness loops.
Yeah.
So you can do a lot of crazy nonsense.
Yep, and there's you could probably play Atlas's favorite card, which is Cloud Shift in this, just to get another bounce, see a little bit more information.
Yeah, definitely a cool deck, but I'm glad to see it showing up. It's a new deck.
Yep.
Number 7, Sisei.
Yeah, Weatherlight Captain.
Which is 5 colors, but it, like we were saying, tells you how to play it. You're tutoring up other legendaries. It goes through some Planeswalker lines.
It has a few different weird
You do have the flexibility of choosing your play style or your way to win.
Yeah.
But I would say it goes to consistency. If this is, I would say, even more consistent than Kenrith.
Yeah, and I think that is because you can, adaptive tutors. You can just do what you got to do. It helps you win a little bit.
There's been so many times where I won't even be like broadcasting that I'm about to win the game, but then the Sisei player will just hold up mana and be ready for whatever is coming their way.
Exactly.
And that's like, and the thing is that it would be less represented and less good if it wasn't an instant speed ability, but it is. And so there are really cool things you can do with the Exalted mechanic from Noble Hierarch and Noble or Ignoble Hierarch. So you can just get a single attack off, raises Sisei's power, and all of a sudden you're grabbing a Derevi, or you're grabbing something that's
tasty.
Yeah, that's tasty and going to come out in the battlefield and make help you break parity.
There's even some decks that play Gigantha and it's a companion because it just is one activation as one Sisei tutor, which is pretty fucking sick.
Yep. That was a big thing that what's her name?
Rebel?
Yeah, Rebel was running. And there's other things that you can do here. You can run a complete stacks build with focusing Lavinia. You can actually focus Kinnan here and just get so many more activations off of just pulling Kinnan to the battlefield.
Yeah, I just love the versatility of this deck.
Me too. It is very good. Plus, 23% conversion rate. Number 7.
Yep. I've lost to it plenty.
Same. Moving on, we have a classic. We have Bruised Thrasios. This is a Sans Blacklist, most famously used by Comedian, the guy who piloted this, or created this list. It's a Dawnwaker list, so it essentially is just a very big mid-rangey value list that makes a lot of mana, draws a lot of cards, interacts, and then tries to win when it feels good and ready. Has a 20% conversion rate because of that.
For you, a reason to play this deck or not play this deck? I feel like you've talked about playing this deck, Jordan.
I even have this deck proxied up. It is a very good deck because I think it's very resilient and it lets you always have something to... It's great because it has something to do with your mana, which is it gives you... Objective A is create mana, but then it always has somewhere to put it because you have Thrasios. And then should you want to go explosive, you just go grab a Seedborn Muse, and then you really start just kind of turning the tides of the game in your favor. To me, this kind of plays like a Kenrith deck that has some different, more focused win conditions. Because there's a few creature type win conditions that essentially, once you go infinite mana, you can win the game with Thrasios.
Yeah, straighter lines to walk, not so much of a jaunt around the bushes and stuff like that. It's
you can do Dockside loops, the Kenrith's reanimate ability and stuff. But yeah, exactly. This is just can you get infinite mana, which is pretty fucking easy to do these days? All right, put it into Thrasios, call it a day.
Yeah, Bruce Thrasios breaks through walls. It doesn't wait, and it's so consistent and resilient that even if you stop it the first time, there's just a really good chance that it's going to do it again.
It's just going to have so much mana and just swarm you in value.
Cool.
Number 5.
Number 5. Kinnan, you know what it does. Number 4.
Get wrecked.
Like, is there anything to say about it?
No,
like, we know it. It's
Just reiterating what you said before, it has the lowest conversion rate here.
16.53%.
Crazy.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, top 4. Let's get to it.
And again, no surprises here, but Rog Sai. We were just
Rog
talking about that deck
Sai.
earlier in the episode.
See, I'm actually pretty surprised that this has almost a 24% conversion rate because this is a very hard deck to pilot.
I mean, but it's Grixis, probably the best color combination to be in.
Deck that really likes to win no matter what. So
if you
there's
want to
also
go
that.
fast.
Yeah.
If you want to go fast.
Yes.
Are you Ricky Bobby? Do you like to go fast?
Did you know that crepes are just like tiny pancakes?
Oh.
Yeah, just like really thin pancakes.
Sick reference. All right,
I'm not gonna say it.
moving on to number 3. This deck is crushing right now, and that is Tivit.
Although didn't show any results at the seaside.
And that was maybe what you were talking about a
Surfside.
little bit, is like getting maybe a little focused and stuff
Yeah.
like that. I mean, it has been putting up a lot of results lately. So
Yeah,
I could
people were
imagine.
saying on Reddit, maybe on the Surfside thread, about like how, it is a little fragile because you have to go through all these artifact lines and stuff. But I mean, I feel like that's not a problem in cEDH.
No.
You got
No.
all them artifacts.
You have a lot of interaction
Yeah.
in this deck, and I feel like you ramp incredibly like it's easy to ramp with this deck. You're always running into those artifacts, but you as soon as Tivit lands, that's the game usually.
Yeah.
And it's not like game over immediately. Sometimes it is. Sometimes the time sieve just sitting there and there's a Grand Abolisher also accompanying it, and then it's game over. But as soon as it enters the battlefield, everyone votes and you get a lot. You get 2 treasures and a lot of clues. And then it has Ward 3, which is the biggest reason of why it sticks. So if your opponent wants to get rid of it at all for any reason and they pay the ward cost, they're just probably holding interaction for the spell regardless. So they've put you off of your line. They've put you off of how much mana you have and made you waste a card on trying to get rid of it, and are just going to keep pushing forward.
We've talked about before how good Ward is.
So
It
good. Ward 3 is
Ward
back
3 is
It's
some of the best protection you can get in this game.
it's better than hexproof. It's better.
Yeah.
Like it just astounds me that they put Ward together, and then after we started playing with the mechanic like a little bit more, Ward 1 is not enough. Ward 2 is oppressive, and Ward 3 is untouchable. Anything more than that, and it's just like, okay, so you just can't target that thing.
Yeah, Ward 4 is just fuck off.
Yeah. Look the other way.
But I mean, this deck has common lines of to combo off with. It's playing like Thassa's Oracle, Consults, stuff like that, those types of lines, but it's also playing a Time Sieve, which one single trigger from Tivit results in infinite turns.
Yep.
So that's a big reason why the deck has seen so much success, is it is a 2-card combo in the commands, like with one of those pieces being in the command zone.
And the other one is 2 mana.
Yeah, and the other one is
A 2 mana artifact in blue.
yeah, so it's kind of wild how, like, when this deck came out, everyone looked at it and was like, wow, that's a really high mana value. Like, I don't know if it's going to thrive. And then
It has thrived.
It has
Spoiler.
thrived. It is number 3.
Well, I was just going to say, we've all been talking about, like, it seems to be like a win second meta, win second format right now. You never want to be the person presenting the first win condition. And I think Tivit is a great win second deck, right? It is not trying to win anytime early, and it's trying to set up a draw engine and interact a little bit until it can resolve its commander. Like, sure, Thassa's Oracle, Demonic Consultation is in there, but that's far from like the main priority. And that is great because that just really lets you establish this oppressive piece that is also the win condition. It's pretty insane.
Yeah. I mean, it's hard to stop the win in Tivit.
Yeah.
Is the problem.
It is.
Yeah.
If you can stop the win, the biggest enemy to Tivit is Dockside, because you're sitting there with all those clues, probably unable to crack them, and nobody's giving you treasures.
Yeah,
That's
the dream
like-
is, you do just dockside when they, gas out on their turn and just win before they get a chance to, essentially.
Yep, on the next go around. So Tivit does have that one singular weakness, but it's in a color pairing that is just so resilient.
It's so ready to stop you from doing that.
Yep.
Okay, moving on to number 2 here.
Great color pairing.
Great color pairing.
Yeah.
It's all 5
All of them.
And you only need 1 to cast it.
Yeah,
Or
it is.
3 mana, but 1 color.
Broken. Najeela the Blade Blossom, possibly one of the most broken commanders of all time, short of Kenrith. Okay, we won't have that debate right now.
No, yeah.
We won't have that debate right now. But it is number 2 on the EDH top 16. Evan is not wrong. It costs only red to caster for 3 freaking mana. 1 Jeweled Lotus as away, I like to say. And yeah, it's a 5-color deck that has a just guaranteed line for winning. It has a way to make an overwhelming board state of soldiers.
What's the magic number? It's like 7 or whatever. 7 turns with Najeela will just win the game through exponential
Oh yeah,
growth.
it's something like that. Just through Najeela's ability alone, you'll have exponential growth. But there'll be interaction stuff throughout the board. But if you can essentially just land a 5-color land, a land that taps for any color, and Derevi, you'll just get to winning the game pretty freaking quickly. In addition to that, you get your 5 colors. You got Thoracle, you got Demonic Constellation.
You get to play all the good cards.
Ad nauseum if you want it. Go nuts. Brain Freeze, Underworld Breach, whatever. You get to play everything in just an army and a can commander with a win condition stapled to it. It's hard not to see why it's one of the best.
Yeah, it is so efficient, and there was at one point where Jordan had proxied a list from was it the database or was it from something here?
No, I think it was somebody's on the database.
Yeah, so he just printed that off, sleeved it up, and he was just like, dude, you just want to try Najeela? And I took my first 7 and I was like, I can win the game like 3 ways on turn 2.
Yeah.
Like it just has a that was like an ad nause variant,
Yeah,
right?
and I played like 3 games before you on that, and each one of them, I felt like I was winning the game every single time.
Yeah, it feels like the 5-color deck that requires the least skill. And I'm not saying it takes an unskilled pilot, but it's the 5-color deck that requires the least skill because the commander, like you're saying, can just win on its own.
I would not
without you having
disagree.
to think about it.
If Kyle wasn't so adamant on making Joda work, this would be the deck that I would push to him because this is his win condition inside of his deck. Like when so Kyle plays Joda the Unifier, which with Essica or whatever allows you to activate Najeela's ability infinitely, and then you just go into infinite combats and punch people to death. It's a really great piece in there for like to help that deck win through combat, but Najeela just does it on her own. So it's like kind of that question, like why not Najeela?
Yeah.
And
yeah, I mean, it's kind of in the back of my head where when I think about decks I should be taking to a tournament to like actually try and win, the answer is probably Najeela. But I'm just always bringing one of my silly decks.
Yeah,
One day I'll actually show up.
Well, it's number 2 for a reason. And I think that, like you said, if you want to put numbers up and you want to see yourself on these top 16 lists, Najeela is a great option to do it.
100%. I think so. All right, let's move on and talk about the number 1, which you think would be exciting until you find out that it's just Blue Farm.
Number 1, Blue Farm.
Turns out you can make your deck better by getting rid of green.
The worst color in the game.
It is, though.
It's 4
Blue Farm.
colors.
What do you have to say about Blue Farm?
It
Card advantage.
Draws a ton of cards.
Card
has
advantage is good.
all of the best win conditions and, generally speaking, all of the best card options in the game.
The most efficient win conditions. And it's, like you said, 2 of the best card engines in the game. If you put both commanders out, you are drawing so many cards.
I would say card advantage or card value comes to mind. I would say the cards in this deck have like an extremely high value. Like they are card quality, rather. Sorry, I think these are very high quality cards.
Right.
Yeah, I mean that's what it does. You put all the best cards together. You give yourself an engine to draw them and put them in your hand so you can play them, or put them in your graveyard so you can replay them with Breach. And that's the name of it, right?
Yeah, I mean,
it's not complicated.
No, it's not complicated. And that's like what we were saying is we're not saying that anyone who plays Blue Farm is not creative, but it is so figured out, but in a way, in the best way possible.
Yeah.
It is.
I mean, nothing wrong with winning a World Series with the Yankees.
Yeah,
You're allowed.
There you go.
It's all good. It still counts. Yeah.
I can't
counts.
say it better. It has a 20% conversion rate, so it's a little bit lower than some of these other ones, but not by much. It has 245 entries at the moment, time of recording, and has topped 50 tournaments. So I've played against it a bunch. It is resilient. It is consistent.
Resilient and consistent is how I would describe it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and it it takes advantage of the best mechanic in the game, and that is drawing cards. If you draw more cards than your opponents, you're going to win the game. And it just keeps getting better and better the more time goes on, because green is not getting any support to help compete with these color pairings. So, I mean, you're getting Orcish Bowmasters here, which is a great utility piece, doesn't really contribute to the draw engine much, but the One Ring does. And this deck got better because it's now starting to plug in the One Ring a little bit more. It has Bowmasters for removal, and the odds of you playing Blue Farm and sitting at the same table with someone also playing Blue Farm is relatively high.
I mean, in the Surfside Showdown, there were 2 Blue Farm players in the top table.
Yep.
Yeah. Yep. And that, I was watching the top 16 Atlas's game, and he lost to Blue Farm.
For you guys, though, what's the reason not to play Blue Farm? I guess if it's the best deck.
I mean, we like to play fun, weird stuff, Evan, more than anybody.
Are there meta reasons or gameplay reasons why you wouldn't play Blue Farm?
I don't know. I just like to educate myself on what it does so I can be prepared for it. Why I wouldn't play it? That's a good question.
I think part of it goes down to play style too. Like, you are through and through a Naya player. You play.
There's just a set of pilots who just are not engineered to play Blue Farm.
It's not the focus. Yeah,
or it's not like what we want to be doing with our cards. I think that your question actually leads into a greater point, that this deck fits pilots, a broader scope of pilots and what they want to do more comfortably than other decks do.
Okay.
Like Nagila, even that is a little bit harder to master than Blue Farm is. Blue Farm is just draw cards, put together the most efficient win conditions in the game, protect it while you're doing so, and walk away with the dub, shake everyone's hand, and watch your conversion rate go up. So if you want to put up numbers at a tournament, you want to be consistent. Consistency is power. Blue Farm has been proven to be the best way to do that.
And if you're not, if you feel like you don't have an expertise in a different deck that's not Blue Farm, just do it.
There's a lot of ways. Yeah, there's a lot of ways to misplay in decks that tutor. There's a lot of ways to misplay in Sisay. There's a lot of ways to misplay with Kenrith. You know, cards that give you options.
It's harder to make options.
Yeah, exactly. And cards that maybe have more known options, like when I'm playing Shalai and Halar. People know that there's 2 options for me, and so it's easy to stick the finger in there and say, nope. And then that disrupts,
Do they say it like
strategy. That? Nope.
Always.
Wow.
And they put their finger on my card and they push it back to my hand. And then
we all saw that. This is a visual medium.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, this is just one where both lines of text on each creature. One is if you punch somebody, you get a card.
Yep.
Or you can multiple cards.
3 cards.
Up to 3 cards,
Yeah.
And then Crom is whenever someone casts their second spell, you get a card. And everyone, this is a format.
People be doing that
all the time. It's why Lotho is so good. And that there's another card that goes in the deck that made it much more powerful. So yeah. Any more reasons that we need?
Blue Farm is good.
It is good.
Good decks are good.
Why not to play it? You want to play silly, fun other stuff and try and make it justified, which is never the right answer for a tournament. But
fair enough. Yeah.
That doesn't stop people from doing it.
But if you do want to be playing the best decks, you can do that by going to eminence.events and checking out the list for yourself. That's where we found all these statistics, all this data.
You can go to edhtop16.com.
Yep.
Make it easier.
Yeah, that's actually probably a more direct route. I'll put the link in the description below for both of those. And you can support the show if you enjoyed this episode by liking us on YouTube, subscribing to us on YouTube first, and then liking this video and hitting that bell for more notifications.
Don't forget to give us 5 stars on any of your favorite podcasting platforms.
Yeah, and we're going to be in Vegas for MagicCon in September. Anyone who's on our Discord who is also going, give us a shout out. We're going to try to set up some games, do some other stuff.
Yes, run some games, maybe have some sick limited merch.
Ooh.
Potential giveaway.
We have been working on something.
Potential giveaway.
Yeah,
so stay tuned.
Yeah, we do have playmats available at the moment and stickers, so just reach out to us if you would like either or.
Yeah, we'd love to get some games in. That'd be great.
And this has been the MoxStars podcast.
Let's go get some games in.
The #1 podcast on the internet, and
specifically involving Dr. Pepper and Magic the Gathering.
We didn't mention it, but Dr. Pepper made the top 16.
We did mention that.
We did.
Oh, okay.
We started the episode with
a breakdown and ended the episode
Dr. Pepper meta. Yeah.
Nice. Okay, great. Vanilla Dr. Pepper, let's go.
It is goated.
Bye-bye.
Bye.